turn, Sandy. Good. Underhill.
Limpet mines attach magnetically to the hull of the ship below the waterline. Now, they work on a preset timer.
You mean this knob here?
Yes, that's right. Now, Finley, you'll take the driving poles. Sloan, you take the brown poles.
Right.
You are listening to TMBDOS. They must be destroyed on sight. The following podcast may contain adult language and discussions of an adult nature. Spoilers for the films discussed occur often. You have been warned. Now, take it away, Dr. Rausch.
They must be destroyed on sight.
It is They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, episode 204. I am your host, Lee. If we're going for a drink, I want to be alive to enjoy it, Russell. And I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel, a benefactor of all whores and seamen. Harper, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, and that is probably the most apt description you've given me to date. So, in fact, I'm going to change that to my Twitter handle. Benefactors, all whores and seamen.
That's good. Yeah, there's some good lines in this film, I will say.
Pretty good.
Yeah, so we are going to be talking about the Sea Wolves from 1980. But before we do that, we'll get into what we've watched lately. And you have one thing you wanted to briefly mention there, Daniel. So
yeah, I haven't really been watching a whole lot of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of just kind of the TV's just always on for pandemic. But I've been working, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to kind of sit down and do a lot of watching of stuff independently that isn't like related to the other podcast I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I have been really enjoying. My wife has been going back through Avatar: The Last Airbender, the animated series, the Nickelodeon animated series, and that really is as good as its reputation gives it. Like there's a lot of there's a lot of kind of like Tumblr-esque kind of conversation around Avatar, and a lot of the show is now 15 years old. It is now on Netflix, at least in the U.S. And it really is a story about like it's not really a story about like a bunch of goofy kids going off and having adventures. I mean, it does have that element to it, but I mean, this really is a story about imperialism and about society and about like what war does to societies and kind of personal redemption. It really is quite good, and it has lots of sequences that are borrowed from 70s martial arts flicks and stuff.
Really,
it's really, really well done. I think it starts off a little bit goofier, but certainly as you get into season 2 and season 3, I mean, this stuff, and it gets, for a Nickelodeon show from 2005, it gets pretty dark. And some of these characters have really kind of come to enjoy and adore, quite honestly. So I haven't really kind of gone through it like systematically, but I've been watching it, kind of off and on, and I find myself, whenever my wife is watching it, I just kind of sit down next to her. I'm like, I'm involved in it all over again. I don't have really a whole lot to say about it, but if you haven't given it a shot and you're, especially in the U.S., or if you're in a place where you can get it pretty easily, it is currently streaming on Netflix, and I would recommend it to people.
yeah, because I always stayed away from it because I was always of the fear that it was basically going to be Dragon Ball Z.
No, it's definitely not that. It's definitely not like that kind of thing. I mean, this is well, the thing was, I was talking to my wife about it, and that is like when I first saw like the ads at the time, like sort of the intro sequence, it feels like something that has this like deeply complicated backstory, but is ultimately just like a bunch of kind of goofing off kids doing like battles with each other, and it's just not that at all. I mean, it really is. I mean, the backstory does like pay off into kind of what the show is and sort of the themes of love and loss and destruction and all that other stuff. And I mean, it is funny. It does have lots of really humorous moments. There's a lot of comedy to it. And I mean, it is a goofy kind of kid show from 2005. But within that confines, it really does. I mean, almost every episode has something kind of really interesting kind of going on in it, even if it's just sort of a neat visual reference or kind of a neat fight scene or, some kind of, some bit of character growth. And it's worth your time.
Did you ever watch the M. Night Shyamalan adaptation?
I avoided that.
Okay.
Like the plague. So I don't know. Maybe if I could see that on somewhere, I might give it a shot. I think I was pulling up a clip from the animated show, and I saw just a little hint, 5 seconds from a video from the Shyamalan movie, and just went, well, that looks terrible. That's just why would anyone spend $150 million making that? This is ridiculous. So
yeah.
But no, the show is don't hold the show by that standard. The show is much better than that. So.
All right, I might check it out. Yeah. So I have a few movies I'll mention that I've watched recently. I've actually watched quite a bit of stuff, but I narrowed it down to these three. In fact, I've probably watched way too many movies in the last couple of weeks.
I kind of go through phases where I'll sit down and watch 3 movies a day. Especially when I'm, if I was quarantined. I mean, you and I are both essential workers, so we're both out doing things in the real world. But if I was stuck at home all the time, I probably would just sit and watch movies all day. So
Yeah. So the first one I'll mention is Red Sparrow from 2018.
The Jennifer Lawrence kind of Black Widow movie sort of thing.
Sort of, yeah. It's kind of like Black Widow if it was done as a well. Here's the thing. The biggest problem with the movie is it tries to be this epic, classy, super long spy movie about Russian girls being put into the KGB spy agency and being sex spies and stuff, right? But all the material is just straight up 1970s exploitation sleaze, right. And if the movie was done that way, it would actually probably work way better. But it's kind of a slog because it's so long. I'm not Jennifer Lawrence is great. Everybody in it's fine. It's just an hour too long. It's about an hour too long.
How long is the movie?
I think it's 2.5 hours.
Jesus Christ.
Almost.
That should be an hour 45 tops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's I enjoyed it, but it is too long. And but I mean it is sleazy, it's sexy, it's brutal, but it's done as this big prestige artistic modern film when really they should have been going for this is kind of a bunch of scumbags and a poor girl who's forced into working for these scumbags and
right no, they should have embraced the sleaze a little bit more, but maybe I don't know. No, it sounds like it was always something that interested me. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll check that out sometime. And you just never do unless it just kind of pops up somewhere, and you're like, oh yeah, I'll check on that.
Another one I'll mention, The Deep from 1977. Mm-hmm. This is sort of an adventure thriller with it's got Robert Shaw, Nick Nolte, Jacqueline Bisset, Louis Gossett Jr. is the villain. It's got Eli Wallach in it. It's based on what's his name? Peter Benchley.
Peter Benchley, yeah.
So it's based on one of his novels. It's deep sea diving in Bermuda. It actually probably pair up kind of well with the one we did there. The Bermuda Depths.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I was didn't we do this one? Because I had vague memories of and then I'm no, the other Bermuda Depths. We did that one, right?
Yeah, but shot in Bermuda too, so it's absolutely beautiful. The scenery's great. The scenery's especially good in the opening moments where Jacqueline Bisset is deep sea diving with Nick Nolte, and she's wearing a white shirt, and that's all she's wearing pretty much.
Well, you're making me. We're just gonna have to watch this now.
Yeah. It's another film that's kind of bloated, it's a bit too long.
Yeah,
but just the performances in it, just the performers in it are great. I mean, Nick Nolte back before he turned into Nick Nolte,
right.
The younger, more hopeful Nick Nolte before life came crashing down.
Yes.
And Robert Shaw is just a sort of super treasure hunter who's kind of famous in Bermuda. Yeah, it's just fun. It's Gossett Jr.'s this Haitian smuggler type guy who's like trying to sort of nose in on this discovery of like treasure in this old sunken ship. And, you know, they're all racing to try to get the treasure off of it. It's pretty good. Like it's kind of fluffy and light, which is kind of why one of the problems why it's like, why is this movie this long? Like it's like it's kind of fluffy in that way. Like there's a couple serious moments, but for the most part, it's like, yeah, it's just people looking good and diving for treasure and in talking about it. And that's
And what else do you want? What else do you want from like that? Yeah.
But no, I enjoyed it. And the last one I'll mention, and this one's going on my best of list this year, it's To Hell and Gone from 2019. And this is an interesting little modern Western. It's got obvious like spaghetti Western influences, but it's set in modern day. And it's about this drifter who's only called the Stranger in the film. Like he's just credited as the Stranger, but he's not your typical like spaghetti Western hero or anything. He's just this guy who drifts around and grifts, you know, to get his food and stuff like that. Like he, you know, scams people and things like that, steals their shit. He's the kind of guy who has like a little box full of dead flies in it, so he can put one into his plate to get like free meals and stuff like that, you know.
Right.
And he just gets in the wrong place at the wrong time and gets involved with these people just pulled off a heist, and it's in the middle of like the Arizona desert, and it's pretty good. Like it
sounds a lot like in a weird way like No Country for Old Men, but
in a way,
but not with that sort of like philosophical or, you know, sort of theoretical bent.
It is kind of interesting that where like in No Country for Old Men, ultimately your main character, he kind of fades out of the narrative at the end there, where it's just like there's just no way he can overcome like the cartel coming for him, right?
Yeah, I mean, a drug cartel puts bullets in him, and he is gone from the movie. And this is not even portrayed on screen. Spoilers for a movie from 2007.
But the interesting thing here is like our protagonist, the Stranger. He's more an observer than anything. Like for most of the movie, it's just his point of view, like watching everybody else, and like he sort of sides with this kick-ass older woman who like owns a ranch or whatever, and it's pretty good. Like he has to make a decision at the end where he wants to go and what he wants to do, but for the most part he does little to nothing. Like he just watches for the most part. Nice. And then this little like neat little crime film with a good little twist in it too just kind of plays out in front of him, and then he steps in at the end. But really, I really enjoyed it. It was a nice little refreshing, like, oh yeah, it's got some sort of Tarantino-esque kind of characters in a way, because the dialogue's kind of witty, it kind of jumps out at you, but it's also kind of naturalistic, and I enjoyed it. It was just a really nice little sleeper surprise. Yeah. So yeah.
It sounds like a lot of fun. No, I'm definitely gonna seek that one out. That one sounds good.
Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to play a little bit of music from the Seawolves. I found the actual soundtrack for the Seawolves. Oh, nice. The Roy Budd's soundtrack, yeah. So I'll be able to pull that right off there instead of some shitty version off of YouTube. Yeah, we'll be back. Talk about the Seawolves.
Awesome.
You ungodly warlock.
Hello, and welcome to Hello, This is the Doom Show. I'm Richard.
And I hate the burning.
Shh, who are you? Speak.
And I'm Brad.
She came in and said, "Buck, buck, buck," and he said, "Buck, buck, buck," and she said, "Buck, buck, buck, buck." That's what I got.
One is the Suspiria boner, the other's the Inferno boner. Anyway.
Which one is crying? The boner of tears.
Hello, This is the Doomed Show is available on hellodoomedshow.podomatic.com and doomedmoviethon.com.
Hello, this is the Doom Show. Richard, Brad, Jeffrey, Naffa. It's the Doom Show. Hello, this is the Doom Show. Slashers, giallo, and horror.
You ungodly warlock.
Okay, the Sea Wolves from 1980.
46 freighters sunk by German submarines in the Indian Ocean in the past month. Look, damn it, we've got to get rid of that transmitter. Do you know how many lives depend on supplies that are lying at the bottom of the Indian Ocean?
I think our first priority is to find whoever heads the spy ring.
What do you want, senor?
I want you to use your influence to persuade the governor to have a reception. Among the invited guests will be every port official from Marmagoa. You got away with killing Trompeter and a fat lot of good it did us.
We did find out that the transmitter's on the Ehrenfeld.
I'd like to go into that harbor with commandos and blow the whole filthy place up, but we can't, which is rather frustrating.
What if a group of British civilians managed to board the Ehrenfeld?
And which civilians did you have in mind?
The Calcutta Light Horse.
Lewis, you're talking about a mixed bag of boozing, middle-aged, pot-bellied businessmen. It's insane, and you know it.
Are you expecting my men to volunteer without having the faintest idea what they're volunteering for?
Right. Unfortunately, Bill, there'll be no pay in it. No pensions if anyone's killed or wounded. And no credit.
It all sounds unbelievably attractive to me. Love it. Now, those of you who are selected will leave in about 7 days.
What are you doing?
Just turning up. You'll be gone for 2 weeks.
Mr. Melbourne, are you all right?
Get out! I think it's best if you tell your wives you've been ordered up to ranch shift.
You're not going to ranching.
Don't be ridiculous.
It's another woman, isn't it?
We still have that date.
That is the best idea I've heard all day.
We're actually stealing an entire ship, and all I get is 5 light horse for crew plus 3 hired lascars.
We are not stealing the Queen Mary.
Then you bring the others across by train to coach in.
Then for a grand finale,
we sail right into Marmagoa Harbor and blow up everything in sight. How long have you got on those mines?
Couple of minutes, maybe.
Start engines! Start engine! Push on! Somebody, what the hell's gone wrong?
And this is directed by Andrew V. McLaughlin, who was big on doing these men on a mission films. Like this is like the tail end of the sort of the heyday of those sort of films. Right. Yep. And he did like The Devil's Brigade. He did Folks, also known as I think High Sea Heist or something like that. It's another Roger Moore one. And it's Folks as FFOLKES. Spelled weirdly, yeah. I actually think we should do that movie as well because Roger Moore in that is wow. He also
he did Mitchell, yeah.
Yeah, he did Mitchell. He did The Wild Geese. He did a bunch of John Wayne. Yep. Yeah, Undefeated, Chisholm, Hellfighters, Cahill, U.S. Marshal, McClintock, Bandolero. He did all kinds of shit. Big time director.
96 episodes of Gunsmoke. Yes.
Yeah, he did a lot of cowboy TV too.
Let's just say, having seen this film, that does not surprise me in the slightest.
No. Written by James Lesor. Well, this is based on his book Boarding Party and about the real events that this is sort of based around. And Reginald Rose did the screenplay, and he also did Wild Geese and Wild Geese Part 2. And he also wrote 12 Angry Men back in the day as well.
Oh,
so,
wow.
yeah, I was he had very few credits, but it's like that jumped out. It's like 12 Angry Men, and he did like the Wild Geese films in this too. Like, wow, that's an interesting career path there. I don't know.
Well, you write the one of the great courtroom dramas of all time, which isn't even a courtroom drama. Later on, you write Gregory Peck covering himself in whiskey. That's a career trajectory I can get behind.
Yeah, and as you might expect, this movie is full of actors who have done these sort of movies beforehand in their sleep. Most notably, Gregory Peck and David Niven here, who were in Guns of Navarone. Roger Moore was in Wild Geese. But yeah, we got Gregory Peck as Colonel Lewis Pugh. Roger Moore as Captain Gavin Stewart.
This is right in the midst of Moore as Bond, right? Like this is okay. I'm not too familiar with the full history of the Bond filmography, but that was something I kind of gathered. So
yeah, I think this is around.
This is 80, right?
This is around Octopussy time frame, I think, somewhere around there. But yeah, David Niven is Colonel W.H. Grease. Trevor Howard is Jack Cartwright. Barbara Kellerman as Miss Cromwell. Barbara Kellerman, I thought she was in more stuff, but mostly it was like very few movies and a lot of BBC television. It was
like 1 or 2 episodes at a time. Yeah, I checked her IMDb or her Wikipedia page.
Like I didn't realize she was the witch from Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the BBC production of that from way back in the day. Patrick Macnee, John Steed himself, is Major Yogi Costley. And of course, he's playing some weirdo character who's like, he's an old white British dude, but he's into like Eastern mysticism and religion, and he likes standing on his head and shit. And yeah, Patrick Allen is Colin McKenzie. Wolf Collar as Trumpetta, and Wolf Collar you will recognize if you've ever seen a Nazi on film, because that's all he plays his entire career, pretty much. Just Google image search Wolf Collar, and you'll see 8,000 Nazi pictures.
Still alive. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, he's been in everything. Yeah, including Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's one of the Nazis who dies at the end. Yeah.
Yep. No, I get it.
Yeah, and Robert Hoffman as U-boat captain, and we have a synopsis here from ETO Film Buff on IMDb. Based on the true story from World War II, British intelligence determines that one of 3 German merchant ships anchored in a harbor in the Portuguese colony of Goa is transmitting information on Allied shipping to U-boats, which in turn are sinking tons of valuable material. Because Portugal is a neutral nation, British forces cannot attack the ship openly, so the task of destroying it falls to the Calcutta Light Horse Regiment. Trevor Howard, Sir Roger Moore, David Niven, and Gregory Peck star as military officers brought out of retirement to, well, not all of them are brought out of retirement, to execute the attack on the Ehrenfels, I believe is the name of the ship.
Yeah, Ehrenfels, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one they signal out as the one transmitting, so yeah. But yeah, this is, like we were saying, it is a partially fictionalized account of the 1943 covert mission to raid those ships in Goa. It's the Calcutta Light Horse Unit, which had been... they hadn't done anything since the Boer War, which was 40 years earlier.
Right, yep.
It also involves some members of the Calcutta Scottish Voluntary Infantry Regiment as well, but they don't mention that here. The actual mission was called Operation Boarding Party. It utilized 14 men from the Calcutta Light Horse and 4 men from the Calcutta Scottish. And the boarding party operation raid, as it was known, remained a British government secret for 35 years, from 43 until 78. So there was like a lot of press around this when the movie finally did come out. Like they had like some survivors and stuff talk about, who were actually in the mission and shit. And but yeah, Daniel, what are your sort of initial thoughts on this?
Yeah, this was a first time watch for me. I'd never really heard of it. I guess I'd seen the title around maybe once or twice, but just popped it up, found it on YouTube, and just watched it. Not really knowing what to expect. It does take a while to get going, I think. I mean, a lot of films from this era. We kind of run into this a lot. This is, again, you've said twice that there were movies that were just a little bit too long. This is about a half hour too long. There's a whole subplot that would be lovely in a film of its own, but has no place in this film.
Yeah.
And that's the love story. It's crammed in. It has no real relevance to anything. It's completely superfluous. In fact, almost everything. This movie could start with like approaching the Light Brigade and going we've got a mission. Let's do this thing. You could cut everything else that isn't like that particular bit, because that's the really good stuff in this film. That said, I think it is an enjoyable film, particularly the last like half hour or so is like really when it really gets moving. It really does kind of satisfy that itch for that kind of old school action scene stuff, kind of middle-aged men running through corridors with machine guns stuff. This is the early blockbuster era. Nobody's going to confuse this with a Spielberg or a George Lucas movie, but it's very old fashioned. And, we do a lot of movies from like the 40s and 50s and 60s here, and this feels like a throwback to like those kinds of, like the fact that he did a bunch of like 60s Western television is like, this feels very, kind of that. And even the fact that they're all kind of doughy middle-aged guys, kind of going off and doing like action scenes. I mean, this is kind of like sold to, sort of like at this time, not even like World War II veterans. I mean, although it is kind of sold to that, but, Korean War and then Vietnam War veterans who, kind of came home and want to feel, like some of the old adventure, maybe,
This is a dad movie. It's a total
It's a very dad movie. And of course, around this time, you had, Vietnam veterans actually going to try to do some of this on their own without government sanction. And that formed the basis of the modern day white nationalist movement. So, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. We can just kind of skip over the like portrayal of the Indian people here, I think.
When you see them, yeah.
When you see, I mean, it really is. I mean, these are imperialist powers kind of vying for control over something that doesn't belong to them in any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And none of that is in any way interrogated in this film. This film does not care about that. And like, I'm going to note it and then just move on because there's nothing else to say about it. The film is not in any way interrogating that. You have to ignore that element in order to enjoy this film.
Yeah.
That said, again, particularly in that kind of last half hour and even in the last half, kind of once you get to the Gregory Peck hanging out and like giving orders to the ruffians, that's a lot of fun stuff. And that's kind of my. I mean, we can talk about the romantic subplot. I don't know. Well, I'll just turn it over to you. We can go where we want to go.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that was not historically accurate. Put in quotations there.
You mean one of the guys that didn't bed the sexy German spy who that didn't actually happen? There wasn't a little James Bond subplot happening in the middle of this caper?
Yeah,
I can't imagine. I can't. Yeah. Wow, I am shocked.
Yeah, it's right between Roger Moore. He's right between two Bond films that he did. To his credit, he gets to play Bond a little bit closer to what Bond is in the actual text.
It's a fine performance. I'm not really arguing about like what it is fine, but the whole movie just stops dead when it's happening. Yeah.
But I mean, he still leans on his charm, and he still has to have a romantic, lead with him that he has to, like seduce and all that stuff. And I mean, that stuff, you're right, that stuff works if it's in another movie. But here it's kind of a distraction. For a while, it kind of makes you ignore the fact that he just kind of screws up this mission by getting involved personally with like this German spy.
It's like, what are you doing thinking with your dick? Like, people died because this guy is like fucking around when he's supposed to be working.
Yeah, the guy who is directly working with him, who like basically begged to get on this mission because he wanted to avenge his son's death, like in some stupid campaign somewhere in World War II. And he gets knifed because he happens to be in the wrong place in the wrong time, and she has to kill him, right? And it's just, it's like, okay, it doesn't work in the sense that it's like, we all know she's a spy, we all know she's a murderess, so the whole seduction thing doesn't really sell too well in this sort of context. Like
there's no tension because there's not a sense of he doesn't know that she's this, although he doesn't seem to know until
that's weird. Like he doesn't like he doesn't, you know she's a fucking spy.
And like why I mean, it's just, why are you doing this? I mean, she's hot, sure, but like, come back. It's fine.
I mean, if I was David Nevin, I would shoot him too and leave him and fucking go.
He's like, I think I'm falling in love with you. I mean, my favorite line is, when he asked her what her name is, because he's calling her Mrs. Cromwell.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, my husband died, but I'm still going back. Okay, so whatever. And then he's like, she said, my name is Agnes, but you can call me Mrs. Cromwell. And he's like, oh yeah, that's hot. That's hot. And I'm like, oh, this is creepy on a lot of different levels. This is not good. She's also like 10 years younger than him. And
way more than 10 years.
Yeah, at least 10 years. Sorry, I was trying to be kind in terms of, actually, we should look that up, actually. That's probably
because Roger Moore was doing the Bond stuff when he got in his 50s.
Right. So
and
Roger Moore was born in 27.
She was born in 49.
So 22 years younger than
him. She's basically banging her dad. Like that's
yeah. Well, which a lot of the Bond stuff tends to just kind of move that way, and certainly that's something that ended in 1980. I mean, we don't see that. In film. Certainly, no, not at all.
Sexual revolution and all that, like that. Bond became a feminist real quick.
Sure, yeah. No, he's certainly banging chicks his own age now, but. No, I didn't look it up, and I was really trying to just kind of be kind and kind of go like, well, among the standards of like Hollywood casting, this is kind of extreme by those standards, but it's absolutely ridiculous, So
that part aside, and like, that's a good like 15 to 20 minutes you could have exercised from this entire film.
I mean, you just don't need it. You just it doesn't really do anything narratively in the film. I mean, there is a little bit of like tension. You do get some neat kind of little action scenes with Roger Moore, like killing some guys, and there's some intrigue and subterfuge and that kind of stuff, but it just doesn't go anywhere, and it's not what this film is. It's just fun.
You notice he has to kill them when he's dressed in a Bondish tuxedo too. But
yeah, I know. He's wearing the white suit, and then he gets shot in the arm, and just kind of like bandages it up, and you don't even really see him do anything with it. I mean, like in movies of this kind, human flesh is like a self-repairing tire. It just sort of like it just fixes itself until your mission is over, and then you slump to one side or whatever. But no, he has to change from the white jacket to the black jacket, which fits him, which doesn't fit him right, and they have to have a whole conversation about how the jacket doesn't fit him, and it's just like, oh my god. Just take me back to the Drunken Sailors, please. I want to watch the Drunken Sailors.
Yeah, see, that's the best part. Like it's the men on a mission stuff. It's the half of their team has to steal this boat and sail it around India and to Goa, right? And they got to do it,
it's a rust bucket. I mean, it's like we're moving like 7 knots. Like, oh my god, you got to sail around India.
It's like I know that this is a secret mission. You're supposed to be inconspicuous, but come on, like they should have been able to steal a slightly better boat than that. But
right. I mean, there's inconspicuous, and then there's like a little too inconspicuous, if you know what I mean. I love that there's a scene where like one of the guys is like, oh no, I see a U-boat, I see a periscope, and it turns out to be a whale's fin, and then everybody's mad at him for warning them that he thought he saw a periscope. Like, better to be false positive than false negative than false positive, or false positive than false negative on that one, right?
It turns out he's right anyway, because the U-boat is out there,
right? And then later on, the U-boat finds them, and then it's like, oh no, it's not worth a torpedo. Well, we could let surface and just bomb them and just hit them with our machine guns. It's fine. Don't matter.
So that's why they don't do it, so they wouldn't get spotted.
The Germans just aren't cruel enough in this film. That's really if the Germans had been just slightly more cruel, then
the Germans are just they're presented as just soldiers doing their job in this movie, definitely.
Mm-hmm. They're also like not enough of a threat. I mean, I guess we have the real history to go by, and we don't have to necessarily sell them as like a giant threat, but there's really no kind of moment in which the Germans really look like efficient or calculated, or they look like, and then when we do get to our kind of finished scene, our guys just basically kind of run up on the boat and like capture everybody, and there's a little bit of gunplay. There is some like kind of neat action stuff there, but you certainly don't get the sense of like this ragtag team can never go against the Imperial Star Destroyer or whatever. Like
I do kind of like that this is a men on a mission movie that's kind of more like, you remember that Clint Eastwood, like Morgan Freeman, Tommy Lee Jones astronaut movie from like the 2000s?
Oh, Space Cowboys, yeah.
Space Cowboys, yeah. It's kind of like that, where it's like, I'm too old for this shit kind of thing. So it's like, there's these montages of them training, and they're all out of shape. They're all ready to keel over with a fucking heart
They're
attack.
literally training them with machine guns on the ship. They literally set up a target and go like, okay, now fire wildly just to prove that you can hit it and move on.
But it's, they've been sitting in India drinking gin and tonics and smoking and just like slowly dying for like 40 years since the Boer War, and fucking it's amazing the comedy that comes out of this little. I wanted more montages of them training, and I wanted more of those characters in the actual group, because I feel like the romance subplot also takes too much away from those characters, because there's
you
just
really
too
don't get a sense of who they are. You really don't get any sense of who they are.
Like you got a couple that are slightly characters. You got the nervous guy who's in charge of the engine. You got Patrick McNee as the weirdo guy who's into Eastern mysticism and also is really good at putting mines on boats apparently and blowing them up and shit. Like, yeah, fine.
I preach of strict nonviolence, which is why my specialty is mines.
Mm-hmm.
I do my duty with honor, which is why I place explosives and blow things up from with no ability to defend against it. That's the
But it's interesting. Like, so Peck and Moore are the professional soldiers who initially botch the initial stage of this mission because they're actually kind of too good at their jobs in a way. Like,
right.
Everyone else around them just dies because they're too efficient. So then they have to go to the Calcutta Light Horse, and this is their brilliant plan. And this just tells you about, goes back to the white imperialism thing. It's like, these guys are old white men. So if they decide to get drunk, and this is their cover, you're businessmen who get drunk and steal a ship on a joyride. Right. That's supposed to be the cover that's going to be like, oh, that'll be all right. If they sail up near the German ship, no one's going to think anything about it.
Well, what do you expect the British to do in India, except for be drunk all the time? Actually, now I'm kind of like, it would actually be even more racist if it had been like, of course the savages of the subcontinent are just soused continually.
But well, I mean, during one of the training montage, there are two scenes where like one guy, he's running and he runs into like an Indian waiter, and he's like, "Why did you let me know you were coming out? He doesn't go to say like, you bloody savage, but it's pretty much that." And then there's one guy's in his office trying to do push-ups, and his secretary comes in and he basically chastises her and tells her, "Get the fuck out of here! I'm having a private heart attack." Right. So they got a little bit of the racism and sexism in there for British Empire style.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's fine. This is the last hurrah of Britain having that world straddling colossus of an empire. This is the very end of that, basically.
Yeah.
It had been in decline. They're now going to turn it over to the Americans, and that's going to be just fine. That's going to be fine.
Yeah, the Americans will do fine. But I do really like the concept of what's going to see our our protagonists through this mission is their knowledge and their skill sets and not their physical abilities. Right. So it offers a bit of a different challenge than your typical men on a mission, World War II men on a mission film, especially like The Wild Geese or anything like. Well, actually, The Wild Geese is a mercenary film, and it's not World War II as far as I remember. I think it's about the mercenary battles in Africa. I think it's one of those ones.
I haven't seen it, so we can put it on the list.
In a lot of those films, it's like they're always the best of the best. Like they put together the best team of
the Magnificent Seven. His specialty is explosives, and now it's like, well, we got a bunch of guys who really don't know much, but they're volunteer. Like they're like you can kill them. It doesn't really matter. That's really their selling point. They'll do this. They'll do this for their country. I mean, they're itching to get out there and be a part of the fight because they're not going to have a chance otherwise.
But it's like I do like that. They're if they get sidestepped by these German sailors, like you see a couple of them they get caught and they get overpowered and they get shot. And there's that one scene where this big machine gun battle happens all of a sudden where everybody gets clapped. It's like a Tarantino movie. It's like fucking Glorious Bastards where
Tarantino clearly was borrowing from these kinds of movies for his aesthetic and his later films and Inglourious Bastards and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Really,
they're old men. Oh, fuck, what's his name? He's the guy with the eye patch in it, and he's been in a million things. He just died recently, too, 2019 or something, I think. His character is Lovecraft.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's been in, Star Trek and Doctor Who and, everything that's existed for the last, 50...
Morgan Shepherd.
Yes, yeah. He's the guy who gets overpowered by, the officers on the German ship. And they take his machine gun and his pistol and shit and try to stop the rest of them. A lot of them are pushing in their 70s at this point, they're supposed to be, I just like that. I like Clint Eastwood would do this sort of same thing in his later films as he'd shit on his action hero badass status by, being the guy who can't run laps anymore and protect the president. What was that? What movie was
The Line of Fire? I think?
Line of Fire, yeah. Where he's too old. Oh, he's not too old. He can still fuck Rene Russo and
he can still save the day. He's just running a little bit slower. He can still kick it with the young guys, and it is kind of it's wisdom, it's experience, and these guys don't even have that. And again, it is if we didn't spend so much time with that subplot, maybe we could have gotten everybody have a little moment of conversation or kind of giving them something to do that kind of makes them special or some characteristic that kind of makes them memorable. And I mean, to me, it is just kind of, again, I've watched it once just a little bit ago, and it is just kind of undifferentiated mass of guys in sweaty guys on a boat.
Yeah, that's I mean, honestly, that's the biggest problem with the film, but it is enjoyable. And and it's a good one. This is one I used to see on TV all the time, and it usually on Saturday or Sunday. And I mean, in that context, 2-hour block of your Saturday or lazy Sunday as a kid, if you want to watch a war movie, this is fucking perfect for that shit, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about it other than I like it a lot. But
Gregory Peck, I feel like it's worth kind of just talking about. I really love the rapport he gets with the men at the end when, you really don't, or I'm not necessarily expecting him to really he's kind of got this kind of British officer class kind of attitude kind of going on. And he shows up and he's the men like him and he seems to kind of respond in kind and he really takes responsibility for these guys. And it is kind of a nice little bit, when, he's kind of sitting there and they're sitting by the pool and they're talking about ordering beers and he's like, so is anyone planning to get drunk tonight? Yeah. Because I sure as fuck am. I mean, it's he orders them 2 bottles of whiskey. Go grab 2 bottles of whiskey, and then the first one is okay, we're gonna take 2 swigs from it, and then pour the rest over yourself, and to make yourself seem like just drunken louts, which they kind of are anyway. But, and then and the other bottle is for our celebration afterwards.
There is this kind of little class difference between the Calcutta Light Horse and him. He's a guy who's still in the thick of things, and David Nevin's character is I wish I could, do what you're doing right now, at the opening there where they're talking. He's like, I wish I could be in the thick of things like you guys are. And he's like, well, I mean, what can I tell you, dude? It's you guys are all pretty much retired and you're in business and stuff. And it's yeah, but we still want to serve and stuff like that. And that's where he gets the idea for this mission and shit. And I mean, Gregory Peck, he's the same age as all these guys. He just kind of connects with them. And it's I mean, they're in this as much as I am, and they're as capable as I am in at least certain ways. And
yeah, Gregory Peck would have been 50, almost 60 at this point. 56, 54, excuse me.
Yeah, it's actually it's interesting. Like it almost feels like Roger Moore's in a different movie half the time because he's so aloof from kind of everybody.
Yeah. He really, I mean, he really does just kind of like, he just kind of goes off and has his own story.
Yeah.
Try not. Be interesting if it was compelling and they like met up in some way at the end. But I mean, he literally just kind of goes off and like he's like at the end of the movie when like the bombs are going off, you just see him kind of standing on the beach and going like, "Hey, I was a part of that.
Yeah,
I fucked that girl. That was my contribution to this project."
And it did. And again, I contest that like Gregory Peck or David Nevin should have just come and shot his ass because he got one of their dudes killed and almost jeopardized his entire mission. That's like
in the real world version of this, he gets like court-martialed immediately.
Well, I mean, you know, the stuff they do. I mean, everything they do is pretty much court-martial offenses because Gregory Peck and Roger Moore they bribe and extort and
I'm sure that was just like endemic though. I mean, you know, like, you see, you're allowed to do that to the natives.
Yeah.
Not, you know, the problem isn't that he went and got laid. The problem is that he went and got laid and got somebody killed and it wasn't, you know, a brown person. That's really the problem.
He extorts the Portuguese governor of that colony. He's like, do you want your kids to keep getting this British education? Well, you better play ball.
Yeah, you better throw a big party. We're gonna put some whores and semen in your governor's mansion, or else your kids don't get to go to school anymore.
Oh, and don't mind the dead German spy on your floor right now. Like,
Yeah,
you're gonna cover that shit up.
You didn't see this. Just remember, you didn't see this. No, it's glorious. You know, like
what is that?
Well, it's not even. It's like, you know, you're the Portuguese governor of this little portion of India, so you are yourself this imperialist overlord, and we're gonna just come in and use our big dick British military to just run right over you because there's a pecking order here, motherfucker. You know?
But you got to think like, what does that guy think too? Because. Not in the loop here. He's just like Roger Moore comes in and tells him this is what it is. This is what's going to happen. And the next thing he knows, he sees Roger Moore with a dead woman who's been knifed on the floor of his office.
In his mind, Roger Moore is like a serial killer.
Cover up for Jack the Ripper? What the fuck did I just do? Like, Jesus Christ.
And the answer is yes. Yes, you did. This character goes around and does this. In every scheme, he finds some sexy girl and then knifes her at the end.
Well,
it's like the comedian in Watchmen. You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's exactly what that character is. I mean,
Yep.
he is Bond from the actual text of the Bond novels, who is just a thug, a hired government thug. And fuck, man, it's just that. I mean, you know, you're right that Portuguese governor, he's part of the structure, but at the same time I kind of feel a little bad for him because his life is haunted from now on. Like he's gonna see that dead
gonna lose sleep.
Yes. He's gonna see that dead girl for the rest of his life, and he's gonna look at his kids, you know, getting their degrees in college and shit. It's like, if you'll do it paid for your school.
It is like movies of this era where they just like leave dead bodies behind everywhere and face no consequences for it. I mean, You do just gotta imagine like that Portuguese governor is just like doing like a full on Jesse Pinkman trying to get rid of that body. Like he has to do it himself because he can't like trust any of his lieutenants to not like go like, why is there a white girl dead in your office? And so he's got to go like hack it up and shit.
Yeah. Yeah, he had to. I mean, the governor had to find someone to hack her up and put her right. Like Jesus Christ. I wonder how bad Roger Moore actually felt about that afterwards. It's like, you know.
Oh, surely this is a man of deep introspection who feels deeply about that.
Probably had several missions where he's fallen in love with a spy. You know.
Feels deeply about the corpses he leaves behind. It's like God quests. Yeah, I like this movie more if I imagine him as a serial killer. That's you know, it's way funnier. It's way funnier.
At one point, the female spy, Kellerman's character, Mrs. Cromwell, like you buy that she's generally horrified that he murders that mole character, the guy with the big mole in his cheek. Like he murders that dude, breaks his neck right in front of her.
Yeah,
she's horrified by it.
Like, dude, I just threw a lamp and you just out and out murdered that motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like, you're a German spy, and therefore you have no feelings whatsoever. That's the thing. Although I love that agree. I mean, he's even like, I think I'm falling in love with you, Mrs. Cromwell. It's like, you met me yesterday. What the fuck are you talking about? I mean, this is a line this guy's playing.
Yeah.
When he thinks it's just this poor innocent woman, like, he deserved to get stabbed and killed. Like, that's ultimately the...
Really did. Like, honestly, that's how I would have written it. It's like that character, he dies because he's dumb. He's putting his dick in a dangerous woman in Goa. Like...
The femme fatale got him, yeah.
I mean, it'd be Red Sparrow or something like that. She'd end up winning, or getting out of there. Just a teeny little bit of trivia. Like we already went through basically most of it, where this is what was real and what's not real and all that shit. The lead character, Colonel Lewis Pugh, by Gregory Peck. The real Lewis Pugh, credited as Major General Lewis Pugh, CB, CBE. DSO JP in this movie's closing credits actually acted as the movie's chief military technical advisor in this one.
Oh.
Yeah, he was still around.
That's why he comes across so well in the film.
Yeah. That's
so
why
also my character, he had the biggest dick in the room. That's the really most important thing. He had literal brass balls. He had them installed at the beginning of the war, knowing it was going to be necessary.
That's why he has the best fight scene too, because he gets attacked in the docks by those guys, and he breaks. He literally he does like a like I've seen. My dad gave me a like from his time in the army. He gave me a combat manual that he was given when he was in the army. And Gregory Peck literally does one of the moves that I've seen in that manual to break a dude's back with his knee. Like, he does that. He just kills the motherfucker. Like, right. Yeah. Okay. So it's like, Gregory Peck looking like a badass in this.
Gregory Peck, retirement age, kills a German soldier with kung fu, effectively.
The whole manual is actually designed that way, where it's like the easiest way to kill people, no matter what your sort of physical condition is. There was actually 4 actual German survivors of this raid on Goa who acted as advisors on this movie as well, which is I don't know how I feel about that. Is that somewhere akin to like them getting Nazi rocket scientists into the space program? Maybe not quite as. I
mean, an ordinary soldier in the German army in 1943. I mean, you fall on the wrong side, but I mean, it is like, you're not talking about like, oh, I was a guard in the SS. I was personally throwing people into ovens at that point. It's like, I was a German soldier.
And that's how they're. Yeah, and that's how they're portrayed in the movie, like we said too. There's this kind of they're sitting there, they're hanging out, like on those ships. They're just hanging out. They're not doing anything. They're just hanging out.
Well, they're going around and they're they've essentially put a blockade for British ships around this. I mean, that's the whole point is like we have to go blow up this ship that's doing these like radio signals that's informing where our boats are so they can be sunk, and that's the whole problem. That's the whole thing. And so, like, these people are, there's a line in the Neil Stephenson book Cryptonomicon, which is a really nice book. It's a Neil Stephenson book. If you have ever read any Neil Stephenson, if you're going to like it or not. But part of it takes place during World War II, and out on a German U-boat. And the protagonist of that section is like this Marine, I believe. U.S. Marine who's kind of like kind of gotten on the boat. It's a weird book anyway. And he this is a guy who's like really rough and tumble, who's used to like digging around in the jungle with an M4. And he's like kind of thinking about like, oh, the war for these guys is like you're sitting at a chair and you're like manning a valve and making sure that the numbers are where they're supposed to be, and then every so often somebody presses a button and then you get notice that like, oh, a bunch of guys just killed, and that's your experience of the war. Which is very kind of modern, and that's pretty much what we see the Germans doing here. They're not up close and personal with this stuff. I mean, they're literally just kind of going like yeah.
modern day drone.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean,
Yeah. So Charlton Heston was in talks to play the lead in this at one point. I know the director wanted.
I'm sure he would do a phenomenal British accent.
I'm British. Yeah, I don't know if that would have worked too well.
I just imagine like the internal racism of the time. He would just kind of be like, "These damn dirty savages,
these apes." Yeah, that's kind of where we're. But I know the director actually wanted Richard Burton to come back from The Wild Geese, but he did not, of course. Although apparently I read somewhere that Richard Burton actually kind of regretted not taking this role for some reason. I don't know why, because this movie didn't really do very well.
And Barbara just wanted to do it. I mean, a lot of times like people just want to do these roles just because like it's just fun to kind of do this for right. You go and you play soldier for 2 months and like you get to goof off and drink a little whiskey and it's fine.
And I mean, it's Richard Burton, so he's not just drinking a little whiskey. He's getting drunk every night. Yeah.
He's like, "Can I play one of the drunken sailors?" That's really
yeah. Barbara Kellerman replaced Diana Rigg. So you almost had an Avengers reunion kind of thing here. Almost. Box office for this, I did not get the budget, but I mean, you look at this and the budget can't be super big, but even then, box office was only 22,000.
Really? Jeez.
Or 220,000.
220,000.
Yeah. Excuse me, but it's still that's
well in 1980. That's
there's no way that
right.
met their budget back, or not even. I bet you they maybe spent half of that amount on advertising.
Yeah, sure.
So who knows?
This is for the era. Like this is kind of what they used to just call a programmer. This is the kind of thing that like you put some money in, you put some actors to it. It kind of comes back. It's just one of your like middle of the road pictures. It's not meant to be the blockbuster. I mean, this is again the beginning of the blockbuster era, really.
Yeah.
Raiders of the Lost Ark is I think 81, so we're not even
really
kind of hit that kind of second wave of that, and so but. This is just the end of that old kind of Hollywood, and that kind of idea of like not every movie has to be that size. It can just be like the thing that it is. Yeah. And again, it feels old fashioned even for that, even for 1980. Like I'm watching this and I'm like, would believe this was made in 1961. Like there's
really
very little here that you couldn't kind of do in the early 60s. It kind of made me think a little bit of the film, which I think I liked a little bit better, Assignment in Beirut. Which we did, which because it had that kind of like spy movie kind of attitude. I mean, it does feel like something a little bit of a throwback from the late 60s, in a weird way.
Also known as Revis.
Yes, also known as
Revis. Yeah. So what do we want to do next? Is this going to be like our last little stop in the 80s before we go back to the 30s? Or
I thought we would do a little bit in the 90s as well.
Okay.
So, I don't know. Well, we can kind of talk maybe off air about like what we're going to do next. Just to kind of announce it because I didn't really have any kind of. I mean, we could look at a list, but I hadn't really thought too hard about it. I do apologize for missing last week. I can't remember if I said this on or off air, but I just had a lot of shit going on last week, and I just couldn't make it in. I miss getting to rewatch Weird Science to talk about with you guys, and of course. Captain America: Winter Soldier, which is possibly the best of the Marvel movies. So I kind of got screwed twice on that one. But it's kind of unavoidable. But so yeah, just wanted to mention that before we get out of here.
Yeah. So Daniel, tell people where they can find you on the interwebs.
Well, I do another podcast. Well, I have a Twitter. It's at Daniel E. Harper. I also do another podcast called I Don't Speak German. It's about Nazis, and it takes Nazis a little bit more seriously than this film does. And I will mention that we do occasionally. A friend of the show here, Jack Graham, is my regular co-host there, and we do occasionally do movie discussions, kind of referring to less about the movies and more about sort of the way they're made and the ideology and the history behind them. And we recently, in episode 51, did the made-for-TV HBO movie from 2000 called Conspiracy, which is about the Von C conference, which is it's got Kenneth Branagh and Stanley Tucci and a bunch of British character actors. And this is the movie. The Von C conference is essentially where the plans for the Holocaust were kind of finalized, and the SS kind of officially takes control. And it is a movie that's very much like 12 Angry Men in terms of its structure. If you haven't seen it, it's actually quite good. And we did do a discussion of that back in episode 51, which is 1 or 2 back by the time this comes out. So, if you're interested at all in that, that might be a good place to start, because it was an interesting discussion. So.
Right on. And you can find us at tmbdos.podbean.com, where you can find all of our Apple Podcasts, Facebook, and YouTube links. Join the Facebook group. Best way to figure out what's going on with us, find out what's coming up next, give suggestions for movies for us to review, and or just, talk to us and tell us we're shit, tell us we're great, the usual shit,
We didn't read any comments this time, but there will probably be more next time, and that will be fine.
Yeah, I needed to... I was a little busy this week. I did not get a chance to translate all these one-word foreign language comments we've been getting on our YouTube videos this week. I'm sure they were all just...
I'm sure they were all great.
They were all brimming with praise and elation for how great we are to provide this podcast entertainment, and they're not at all derisive, evil, nasty, vile insults about how we did not provide the movie for them to watch.
I'm sure that's exactly what we're going to find.
Yeah, I'm trying to be positive. It's dark times right recently. I want to be more positive.
It's all going to be random language translations of "Bravo, sir."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I suspect. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we will be back again with whatever we talk about fucking covering here in a few minutes.
We'll figure it out off mic,
Yeah, so join the Facebook group, assholes, and you'll figure it out. Yeah, it's I got to throw some truth out there every once in a while.
Yeah. No, that's the way it goes.
But, later, guys. Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For further episodes, our Apple Podcasts, Facebook, and YouTube links, please go to tmbdos.podbean.com. Thank you. Drive through.